My name is Maureen, and at 56 years old, I thought I had done everything right as a mother. I raised my daughter Stephanie alone after my divorce, worked double shifts as a nurse to give her every opportunity, and watched with pride as she graduated from college and built a successful life. But one afternoon, during what should have been a simple family lunch, my daughter stood up and said loud enough for everyone to hear that I was not welcome, not in her new life, not in her world. And in that moment, my heart shattered into pieces I did not know could break. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever felt rejected by someone you love, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear how this story unfolds, because what happened after that lunch changed everything. Let me take you back to where it all began. To understand how a mother's love could be rejected so publicly, I need to start at the beginning so you can understand how we got to that terrible moment. My story starts in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised in a working-class neighborhood. My father spent 30 years in the coal mines, coming home each evening with black dust under his fingernails and exhaustion in his eyes. My mother worked as a waitress at a diner on Fifth Avenue, serving coffee and eggs to steelworkers during the morning shift. We did not have much, but we had each other, and my parents taught me the value of hard work and honesty. I finished high school and became a nurse at Allegheny General Hospital. The work was demanding, but I loved helping people during their most vulnerable moments. When I was 24, I met Glenn at a friend's barbecue. He was charming, funny, and seemed like everything I wanted. We married quickly, and 2 years later, I gave birth to Stephanie. Holding her tiny body in my arms for the first time, I made a promise that I would give her a better life than I had. But Glenn changed after Stephanie was born. He started drinking heavily, staying out late, and when he came home, his temper was unpredictable. I tried to make it work for years, hoping he would change, hoping our daughter would not grow up in a broken home. But when Stephanie was 8 years old, and I found myself holding ice to my cheek after one of Glenn's rages, I knew I had to leave. The divorce was messy. Glenn disappeared shortly after sending no child support, no birthday cards, nothing. It was as if he had never been a father at all. So I raised Stephanie on my own. I picked up extra shifts, working nights and weekends. There were months when I ate nothing but crackers and peanut butter, so Stephanie could have proper meals. I bought my clothes from thrift stores while making sure she had new sneakers for school. When she showed interest in piano, I saved for 6 months to afford lessons. When she wanted to try ballet, I worked overtime to pay for her classes. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I saw her smile. Stephanie was a bright child, curious and kind. We had our routines. Saturday mornings, we would bake cookies together in our small kitchen flour, dusting our noses as we laughed. Sunday afternoons, we walked through Shenley Park, feeding the ducks and talking about her dreams. At night, I read to her until she fell asleep, her small hand clutching mine. She would often say, "Mom, you are my hero," and those words fueled me through the hardest days. When Stephanie was accepted to Boston University with a partial scholarship, I cried tears of joy. She was the first person in our family to attend a 4-year college. I took out loans to help with the expenses her scholarship did not cover, working extra shifts to send her spending money. Every phone call from Boston filled me with pride as she told me about her classes, her new friends, and her dreams of working in advertising. During her senior year, Stephanie called with exciting news. She had met someone. His name was Preston Hartfield, and from the way she described him, I could hear the infatuation in her voice. He came from money, she said. His father was a prominent lawyer in Connecticut, and his mother owned a chain of jewelry stores. Preston himself had graduated from Harvard Business School and worked at an investment bank in Manhattan. I was happy for her, though I admit I felt a small flutter of worry. Would someone from that world accept a girl whose mother was a nurse from Pittsburgh? When I finally met Preston, my worries seemed unfounded. He was polite, well-dressed, and spoke confidently about his career. But there was something distant in his eyes, a coolness that made me uncomfortable. When I met his mother, Constance Hartfield, that discomfort turned into something sharper. She looked at me like I was a stain on her expensive carpet. Her handshake was limp, her smile forced. She asked what I did for work, and when I told her I was a nurse, she said, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that made it clear she thought it was anything but nice. The wedding took place at an estate in Connecticut. It was the kind of place I had only seen in magazines, with manicured lawns and a tent decorated with thousands of white roses. I wore the best dress I could afford, but standing among the guests in their designer gowns and tailored suits, I felt invisible. During the reception, I sat at a table near the back, while Constance held court at the front, surrounded by her friends. Stephanie looked beautiful in her wedding dress, but when she caught my eye across the room, she quickly looked away. That small moment hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I pushed it aside. This was her day, and I was just grateful to be part of it. After the wedding, Stephanie and Preston moved into a penthouse in Manhattan. Her life became a whirlwind of cocktail parties, weekend trips to the Hamptons, and luxury I could barely imagine. At first, she called regularly, telling me about her new job at an advertising firm and the exciting projects she was working on. But slowly, the calls became less frequent. When I called her, she always seemed rushed. "Mum, I am in a meeting. Mum, Preston and I have plans. Mum, can I call you back later?" She never did. I visited New York a few times, taking the train from Pittsburgh. Each visit felt more awkward than the last. Stephanie would meet me for lunch, but she seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly. She never invited me to her apartment or introduced me to her new friends. Once, when Constance came to visit and I happened to be there, Stephanie introduced me quickly before suggesting I head back to my hotel early because they had dinner reservations. I left feeling like an intruder in my own daughter's life. The changes in Stephanie were subtle at first. She started making comments about my appearance. "Mum, maybe you should update your wardrobe a bit. Those jeans are so outdated. Mum, you do not need to talk about your nursing job at dinner. It makes people uncomfortable." Each comment stung, but I told myself she was just trying to fit into her new world. I tried to be understanding, even as it felt like she was slowly erasing the part of her life that included me. Then came the phone call that would change everything. Stephanie called on a Tuesday evening, her voice bright and cheerful. "Mum, I wanted to invite you to a family lunch. Preston's parents will be there and some of their close friends. It will be at this lovely restaurant in the Upper East Side. Please say you will come." I was surprised by the invitation. It had been months since we had spent any real time together. "Of course, honey," I said. "I would love to." She gave me the details, and after we hung up, I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this was a turning point. Maybe Stephanie wanted to bring me back into her life. I prepared carefully for that lunch. I went to a department store and bought a new dress, navy blue, with a modest neckline. It cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but I wanted to make a good impression. I booked a train ticket to New York, leaving early Saturday morning, so I would arrive with plenty of time. As the train pulled into Penn Station, I felt nervous, but optimistic. This was a chance to reconnect with my daughter, to show her world that I belonged, even if I did not have their money or status. The restaurant was in a neighborhood I had never been to before, where the buildings were tall and elegant and doormen stood outside every entrance. I found the restaurant a place with white tablecloths and crystal chandeliers and took a deep breath before walking in. The hostess looked me up and down before asking if I had a reservation. "I am here for the Hartfield party," I said. She nodded and led me through the dining room to a private area in the back. Stephanie was already there, sitting next to Preston. Constance sat across from them, wearing a white suit and diamonds that caught the light. Preston's father, Howard, sat beside her, his expression neutral. There were also two other couples I did not recognize, friends of the Hartfields. Everyone turned to look at me as I approached. Stephanie gave me a tight smile. "Hi, Mum. I am glad you could make it." I leaned in to hug her, but she stiffened, and I pulled back quickly. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly. I took the empty seat at the end of the table, feeling the weight of their stares. The conversation resumed, and I tried to follow along, but they were discussing things I knew nothing about. Yachts, summer homes in Europe, stock portfolios. I smiled and nodded, feeling more out of place with each passing minute. At one point, Constance turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "So, Maureen, you still work at the hospital?" Her tone was sweet, but the condescension was unmistakable. "Yes, I have been a nurse for over 30 years. It is rewarding work." Constance made a small sound, something between a hum and a laugh, and turned back to her friends. The meal continued, and I picked at my food, my appetite gone. Then Constance mentioned an upcoming trip to the French Riviera. "Howard has rented a villa for 2 weeks. It will be wonderful. Preston and Stephanie are coming with us, of course." I glanced at Stephanie, who was looking down at her plate. "That sounds lovely," I said, trying to sound casual. "When are you going?" Constance did not look at me when she answered. "Next month. It is a private family trip, dear." The word private hung in the air like a slap. I felt my face flush, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Oh, I see." One of the other guests, a woman named Lydia, leaned forward. "I heard you are also having a big celebration for your anniversary, Constance." 200 guests. Constance nodded, pleased. "Yes, it will be quite the event. Just close friends and family." My heart sank. I had not heard anything about this from Stephanie. "Honey," I said quietly, turning to my daughter. "When is that?" Stephanie would not meet my eyes. "Next month, Mum. I thought I mentioned it." "You did not?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There was an awkward silence at the table. Constance broke it, her voice sharp. "Stephanie, you should clarify the guest list with your mother." Stephanie's face turned red, and she looked like she wanted to disappear. "Mum, the thing is," she started, then stopped. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. I could feel it coming. Constance decided to answer for her. "What Stephanie is trying to say is that the celebration is for people of a certain social standing." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Are you saying I am not invited?" I looked around the table. Howard looked uncomfortable. The other guests were suddenly very interested in their wine glasses. "Stephanie," I said, my voice shaking. "Tell me this is not true." She did not answer. The silence stretched on, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "I raised you," I said, my voice louder now. "I gave up everything for you. I worked myself to exhaustion so you could have opportunities I never had. And you are going to sit there and let them exclude me." Stephanie finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes broke my heart. It was not defiance or anger. It was shame, but not shame at what they were doing. Shame of me. Then she stood up. The entire restaurant seemed to go quiet, though I know that could not have been true. But in that moment, it felt like the whole world stopped. Stephanie's voice was clear and loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to look. "Mum, the truth is you are not welcome. Not at the party, not in this part of my life. You do not fit in. You never will." The words echoed in my head. I sat frozen, unable to process what I had just heard. The daughter I had sacrificed everything for, the little girl I had rocked to sleep and comforted through nightmares, had just told me in front of strangers that I was not good enough for her world. I looked at Preston, hoping he would say something, anything to defend me. But he sat there silent, a small smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. Constance looked positively triumphant. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. My purse fell from my lap, but I did not bend to pick it up. I looked at Stephanie one last time. "I understand," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out of that restaurant, my vision blurred with tears. I refused to let fall until I was outside. The moment the fresh air hit my face, the tears came. I walked without direction, the streets of Manhattan blurring around me. Eventually, I found myself in a small park and sank onto a bench. The rain started a light drizzle that matched my mood perfectly, and I sat there crying, wondering where I had gone so terribly wrong. I do not remember how long I sat on that bench in the rain. Time seemed to stop as I replayed Stephanie's words over and over. "You do not fit in. You never will." Each repetition felt like another knife to the chest. Eventually, the cold seeped through my clothes and I forced myself to stand. I found my way to Penn Station, bought a ticket for the next train to Pittsburgh, and sat in the waiting area among strangers, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The train ride home was a blur. I stared out the window at the darkness, seeing nothing. When I finally arrived in Pittsburgh after midnight, I took a cab to my small house in the neighborhood where I had raised Stephanie. Walking through the door, I was surrounded by memories. Photos of Stephanie covered the walls. Her elementary school artwork still hung on the refrigerator. Her high school graduation tassel dangled from my rearview mirror. Every corner of this house held a piece of her, and now all of it felt like a monument to my failure. I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I could not face anyone, could not pretend to be okay. For a week, I barely left my bedroom. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying not just that horrible lunch, but every moment of Stephanie's life. Had I pushed her too hard? Had I not pushed her enough? Where had I lost her? When did my love become something she was ashamed of? The questions tormented me. I thought about all those nights I had come home exhausted from double shifts, my feet aching, my back screaming only to help her with homework or drive her to piano lessons. I thought about the times I had eaten cereal for dinner so she could have a hot meal. The winter I wore a coat with a broken zipper because I had used the money I had saved for a new one to buy her a dress for the school dance. Every sacrifice I had made with love now felt hollow. My friends Carol and Linda came to check on me when I stopped answering their calls. They sat on my bed while I cried and told them everything. Carol, who had known me since nursing school, was furious. "That ungrateful child," she said, her face red with anger. "After everything you did for her, how dare she treat you like that?" Linda, who was gentler, rubbed my back and said, "You do not deserve this, Maureen. You were a wonderful mother. You still are." But their kindness only made me cry harder. If I was such a wonderful mother, why did my daughter reject me? Why was I not good enough for her new life? The questions had no answers, and the pain felt endless. "I am not sure I can come back from this," I told them. "I think I have lost her forever." Carol gripped my hand. "You have not lost yourself, though. And right now, that is what matters. You need to stand up for Maureen, not for Stephanie, for you." Her words stayed with me after they left. Stand up for myself. For so long, my entire identity had been wrapped up in being Stephanie's mother. I had not been just Maureen in decades. Who was I without her? The question terrified me, but it also planted a seed. Maybe it was time to figure that out. 2 weeks after the lunch, I was sitting at my kitchen table, forcing myself to eat toast. I could not taste when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Maureen," a young woman's voice said. "My name is Ashley. I am Stephanie's assistant at her advertising firm. I am so sorry to call you like this, but I think you should know something." My heart started racing. "Is Stephanie okay?" I asked. There was a pause. "Physically, yes. But Mrs. Maureen, I am worried about her. She has changed so much in the past year. She cries in her office when she thinks no one can hear. She wears long sleeves even in summer, and I have seen bruises on her wrists that she tries to hide with bracelets. Her husband calls her constantly, and when she talks to him, she sounds scared. His mother comes to the office sometimes and speaks to Stephanie in a way that is just cruel." I felt cold all over. "What are you saying?" Ashley's voice was gentle but firm. "I think Stephanie is being controlled, maybe even hurt. She is not the same person she was when she started working here. She used to be confident and creative. Now she is withdrawn and anxious. I know what happened at that lunch. Stephanie told me about it and she cried afterward. She said she did not mean those things, but that they made her say them. I am telling you this because you are her mother, and I think she needs you even if she cannot admit it." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. My anger at Stephanie began to shift into something else. Fear, concern. I thought back to the wedding, to the way Preston's hand had gripped her arm a little too tightly when they danced. The way Constance had criticized everything Stephanie did, from her dress choice to the way she laughed. The way Stephanie had seemed dimmer somehow, as if her light was being slowly extinguished. I spent the next few days thinking. I searched online for information about Preston and found an old article from his college newspaper about an incident with a former girlfriend who had accused him of assault. The charges had been dropped after his family's lawyers got involved. My hands shook as I read. Then I searched for information about controlling relationships, about emotional abuse, about manipulation. With each article, I saw more and more of Stephanie's situation reflected back at me. I also did something I had not done in years. I looked at myself honestly. Yes, I had been hurt by Stephanie's words. Yes, I had been rejected and humiliated. But if my daughter was in danger, my pain did not matter. What mattered was getting her out. However, this time would be different. I would help her, but I would not lose myself in the process. I would not accept being treated as less than. I would stand up not just for her, but for both of us. I called Ashley back and asked her to help me gather information. Over the next week, she sent me copies of emails between Preston and Stephanie where he berated her for small mistakes. Screenshots of texts where Constance criticized everything from Stephanie's weight to her career choices. Photos Ashley had discreetly taken of bruises on Stephanie's arms. It was not enough for police, maybe, but it was enough for me to know the truth. My daughter was trapped. I made a plan. I would go to New York, but not to beg Stephanie to love me again. I would go to offer her a way out. And this time, I would make it clear that my help came with conditions. I deserved respect. I deserved honesty. I deserved to be treated like a human being, not a shameful secret. If Stephanie wanted my help, she would have to meet me halfway. The night before I left for New York, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. My hair was grayer than it had been a year ago. Lines had deepened around my eyes. I looked tired, but I also looked determined. I was done being a doormat, I said to my reflection. This time I stand up for myself too. I packed a small bag, set my alarm for early morning, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. I took the first train to New York, arriving at Penn Station just after noon. My plan was simple. According to Ashley, Stephanie left her office around 6. I would wait outside her building and intercept her before Preston arrived to pick her up. The hours between noon and 6 felt endless. I walked around Manhattan, not really seeing anything rehearsing what I would say. By 5:30, I was positioned across the street from Stephanie's office building, watching the revolving doors. At 6:10, I saw her. Even from a distance, I could see how much she had changed. She was thinner, her shoulders hunched in a way they never used to be. She wore an expensive coat and carried a designer handbag, but she looked fragile, like she might shatter at any moment. I crossed the street, my heart pounding. "Stephanie," I called. She turned and her eyes went wide with shock. "Mum, what are you doing here?" Her voice was high-panicked. She looked around nervously as if expecting someone to jump out. "We need to talk," I said firmly. "I can't," she said quickly. "Preston is picking me up any minute." "Then we'll talk right here, right now," I said, moving closer. I wasn't asking. Stephanie looked like she wanted to run, but something in my expression must have stopped her. Her hands twisted together, a nervous gesture I recognized from her childhood. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Ashley called me," I said, watching her face carefully. "She told me what's been happening." Stephanie's face went white. "She had no right," she whispered. "She was worried about you. And so am I." Stephanie shook her head violently. "I'm fine. Everything is fine. You need to leave." "Stephanie, please," I said, stepping closer. "Just talk to me." But she backed away, and that's when I saw it. Her sleeve had ridden up slightly, revealing a bracelet, and above it, the edge of a bruise, dark purple against her pale skin. "Let me see," I said, reaching for her arm gently. She jerked away. "Don't." But it was too late. I had seen enough. The bracelet slipped as she moved, revealing more bruising that circled her wrist like a handcuff. "Who did this to you?" I asked, though I already knew. My voice was shaking with anger and fear. "It's not what you think," Stephanie said, tears starting to fall. "Then tell me what it is," I said. "Please, honey, just tell me the truth." And then, standing on that busy Manhattan sidewalk, with people rushing past us, my daughter broke. She started crying, really crying, the kind of sobs that shake your whole body. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms, and this time she did not pull away. She clung to me like she used to when she was small and had a nightmare. I let her cry, holding her tight, not caring that we were making a scene. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her mascara had run, but she looked more like my Stephanie than she had in years. "Can we go somewhere?" she asked. "Not my apartment. Somewhere else." I nodded. "There's a coffee shop around the corner." We went inside, found a booth in the back, and I waited while she gathered herself. Then slowly she started to talk. "Preston changed after we got married." She began, her voice hollow. "At first it was small things. He did not like my friends, so I stopped seeing them. He thought my clothes were too casual, so I changed my style. He wanted me to quit my job, but I refused. And that's when things got worse." She paused, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "He controls everything. My phone, my money, where I go, who I talk to. If I argue, he gets angry. Sometimes he grabs me. Once he pushed me into a wall. I hit my head, and he apologized, said it would never happen again. But it did." "And his mother?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Constance is worse in some ways," Stephanie said bitterly. "She never hits me, but the things she says cut just as deep. She tells me I'm not good enough for Preston, that I'm lucky he married someone from my background. that I should be grateful they took me in. She criticizes everything: my hair, my weight, the way I talk. She said I needed to cut ties with you because you were an embarrassment to the family. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. And that's why you said those things at lunch. Stephanie nodded miserably. Constance wrote out what she wanted me to say. She practiced it with me the night before. She said if I did not do it, Preston would leave me and I would be left with nothing. I signed a prenup, Mum. If we divorce, I get almost nothing. And Preston threatened that if I ever tried to leave his family, would destroy me. They have lawyers, connections, money. I would never work in advertising again. I believed him. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice breaking. Why did you shut me out? Stephanie looked at me with such pain in her eyes. Because I was ashamed, she whispered. I chose this. I chose them. I was so dazzled by their money and status that I ignored every warning sign. And when I realized what I had done, I was trapped. I had hurt you so badly, pushed you away, said horrible things. How could I come back from that? How could I admit I was wrong after everything? I reached across the table and took her hands. You can come back from anything, I said firmly. You're my daughter. I love you. I will always love you, but things need to be different this time. She looked at me confused. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. I will help you leave, Preston. I will support you through this, but I need you to respect me. No more hiding me. No more being ashamed of where you came from. I am proud of who I am. I worked hard my whole life. I raised you with love and sacrifice. I will not be treated as less than ever again. Tears streamed down Stephanie's face. You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm so sorry, Mum. For everything. For how I treated you. For what I said. I have been so lost. I became someone I don't even recognize. Can you forgive me? I squeezed her hands. We'll work on forgiveness together. But first we need to get you safe. We need a plan. We talked for over an hour, and I could see my daughter slowly coming back to herself. She told me about the evidence Ashley had been collecting, the emails, the texts, the photos. We talked about lawyers, about leaving, about what life might look like after. It would not be easy. Stephanie would lose the money, the apartment, the lifestyle. But she would gain something far more valuable: her freedom. As we were preparing to leave the coffee shop, Stephanie's phone rang. Her face went pale. It's Preston. He's outside my office building, wondering where I am. What do I tell him? Tell him you're with me, I said. Tell him you're done. She looked terrified. He'll be so angry. I know, I said. But I'll be right there with you. You're not alone anymore. We walked back to her office building together. Preston's black Mercedes was idling at the curb. When he saw us approaching, he got out of the car, his face dark with anger. What is going on? He demanded, ignoring me completely and focusing on Stephanie. Where have you been? I've been calling you. I was with my mother. Stephanie said, her voice shaking but steady. We were talking. Preston's eyes flicked to me with contempt. Of course. The poor nurse comes to save the day. He sneered. Stephanie, get in the car. Now. No, Stephanie said. It was barely a whisper, but it was there. Preston's expression turned dangerous. What did you say? No. Stephanie repeated louder this time. She stepped closer to me. I'm done, Preston. I'm leaving you. His face turned red. You're making a huge mistake. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I stepped forward, putting myself between him and my daughter. Actually, I know exactly who we're dealing with. A bully. A man who hurts women and hides behind his family's money. You think you're powerful? But you're just a coward. Preston took a step toward me, his fists clenched. Watch your mouth, old woman. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone. I've been recording this entire conversation, and we have evidence, medical records, photos of bruises, text messages, emails. If you ever touch my daughter again, if you threaten her, if you come near her, I will go to the police. I will go to the press. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. For a moment, I thought he might hit me, but there were people on the street phones out watching. He looked around and seemed to realize he was trapped. Fine, he spat. But you'll regret this, both of you. He got back in his car and sped away. Stephanie and I stood there for a moment, both of us shaking. Then she turned to me with wonder in her eyes. You stood up to him. I stood up for both of us. I corrected gently. Now let's get your things and get you out of here. We went to Stephanie's apartment while Preston was gone. She had maybe an hour before he would come back, and we used every minute. She grabbed clothes documents, her laptop photos from her childhood that she had kept. The apartment was beautiful, all sleek lines and expensive furniture, but it felt cold. There was nothing of Stephanie in it. Nothing that showed who she really was. It was like a showroom, not a home. As we were leaving, Stephanie paused by the door and looked back. I thought this was everything I wanted, she said softly. This apartment, this life. But I've never been more miserable. The best things in life aren't things I said something my mother used to tell me. They're the people who love you and the freedom to be yourself. She nodded, and we left, closing the door on that chapter of her life. We took a cab to Penn Station and bought 2 tickets on the next train to Pittsburgh. As we sat in the station waiting for our train, Stephanie leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was a little girl. I'm scared, she admitted, of what happens next. I am too, I said honestly, but we'll figure it out together. And this time we'll do it right. With honesty. With respect. With love. The train ride home was quiet. Stephanie slept for most of it, exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. I watched her sleep, her face peaceful for the first time in I did not know how long. I thought about the journey ahead. The divorce would be ugly. Preston's family would fight back. There would be legal battles and financial struggles. But we would get through it. We had survived worse. When we arrived in Pittsburgh in the early morning hours, I took Stephanie to my little house, the one she had grown up in. She looked around at the familiar space, at her childhood photos still on the walls, at the furniture we had bought together at yard sales years ago. It's so small compared to the apartment, she said, but it feels like home. That's because it is, I said. Your real home, the place where people love you for who you are, not what you have. Over the next few weeks, Stephanie began the process of rebuilding her life. We found her a lawyer, not a fancy Manhattan attorney, but a good one in Pittsburgh who believed in her case. She filed for divorce and started documenting everything Preston and his family had done. It was difficult work, dredging up painful memories and facing the reality of what her marriage had been. Stephanie also started therapy. She needed help processing the trauma of what she had endured and the guilt she felt over how she had treated me. Her therapist helped her understand that she had been a victim of manipulation and abuse, that the things she had said at that lunch were not truly her words, but ones that had been forced on her through fear and control. During this time, my daughter and I also worked on rebuilding our relationship. It was not easy. There were conversations where old hurts surfaced, where I had to express how much her rejection had wounded me, and where she had to sit with the consequences of her choices. But we were both committed to honesty this time, to not sweeping things under the rug, but actually dealing with them. One evening, about a month after she had moved back home, Stephanie found me in the kitchen making dinner. "Mum, can we talk?" she asked. "Of course," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had done her homework together, where I had helped her prepare for college interviews, where we had shared countless meals. "I need to really apologize to you," she said. "Not just for what I said at that lunch, but for everything before it. For being ashamed of you. For treating you like you were not good enough. You gave me everything, and I threw it back in your face." I sat down across from her. "I appreciate that," I said, "and I forgive you. But I need you to understand something. My worth is not dependent on your approval or anyone else's. I am proud of my life. I am proud that I worked as a nurse and helped people. I am proud that I raised you on my own with integrity and love. I am proud of where I come from. I will never apologize for that again, and I will never let anyone make me feel less than because of it." Stephanie nodded, tears in her eyes. "You should not have to. You're amazing, Mum. You always have been. I just got so caught up in this idea of who I thought I needed to be that I lost sight of what really matters. I let Preston and Constance convince me that where we came from was something to be ashamed of. But it's not. It's something to be proud of. You worked so hard to give me opportunities, and instead of honoring that, I spit on it. I'm so sorry." We both cried then and hugged, and it felt like a real beginning. Not a return to how things were before because we could not go back, but a start of something new, something built on mutual respect and understanding. The divorce proceedings were as ugly as I had anticipated. Preston's lawyers tried every tactic to discredit Stephanie and protect their client. They painted her as unstable as a gold digger who was making up stories for money. But Stephanie held firm. The evidence Ashley had helped collect, along with testimony from other colleagues who had witnessed Preston's behavior, helped her case. Constance even showed up to court one day, glaring at both of us from across the room, but she could not intimidate us anymore. One particularly memorable moment came when Constance called my phone directly about 3 weeks into the legal battle. I answered, keeping my voice calm. Mrs. Thompson Constance said, her voice dripping with disdain, "You've made a terrible enemy." "Did I?" I replied. "Because from where I'm standing, I just freed my daughter from a terrible family." She sputtered for a moment. "Stephanie will never make it without us. She's nothing without the Hartfield name." I felt a surge of satisfaction. "She's everything without you. She's my daughter. She's strong, intelligent, and kind. All the things you and your son tried to destroy, but you failed. And you know what I said?" My voice growing stronger. "You called me a poor nurse from nowhere. And you're right. I am a nurse. I worked my whole life in a hospital helping people at their most vulnerable. What have you done with your money and status? Bought jewelry, attended parties. My daughter learned compassion and strength from me. What did she learn from you? Only cruelty and superficiality." There was silence on the other end. Then Constance said icily, "You'll regret this." "No," I said firmly. "The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner." And with that I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful in a way I had not felt in years. The divorce was finalized after 6 months. Stephanie did not get much financially due to the prenup, but she got something far more important: her freedom, her dignity, her sense of self. She found a new job at a smaller advertising agency in Pittsburgh, one that valued her creativity and treated her with respect. The salary was lower than what she had made in New York, but she told me she had never been happier going to work. We continued living together for a while, and it was good for both of us. We fell back into old rhythms, cooking dinner together, watching movies on Friday nights, taking walks in the park on Sunday afternoons. But this time, it was different. We were not mother and dependent child. We were two women who respected each other, who had been through fire and come out stronger. 6 months after Stephanie moved back to Pittsburgh, she found her own apartment. It was small, just a one-bedroom in a modest neighborhood, but it was hers. She decorated it with photos of us, with artwork she loved, with books and plants and things that reflected who she was. The first time I visited, she gave me a tour with such pride. "This is my home, Mum," she said. "Mine. And you are always welcome here." Those words meant everything. Not just that I was welcome in her physical space, but that she wanted me in her life openly and without shame. We had dinner together at least twice a week. She came to the hospital sometimes to meet me after my shifts, and we would grab coffee and talk. She introduced me to her new colleagues and friends, always saying, "This is my mum, Maureen. She raised me. She's my hero." Stephanie also started giving back. She began volunteering at a women's shelter, helping women who were trying to leave abusive relationships. She said it was her way of honoring what she had been through and helping others find their way out. I was so proud of her. She had taken her pain and transformed it into purpose. As for me, I discovered parts of myself I had forgotten existed. I joined a book club with Carol and Linda. I started taking a watercolor painting class at the community center. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. I was learning to be Maureen again, not just Stephanie's mum, and it felt good. I had spent so many years defining myself solely through motherhood that I had lost track of who I was as an individual. Now I was finding her again, and I liked her. One Sunday afternoon, about a year after that terrible lunch, Stephanie and I were walking through Shenley Park, the same park we had walked through when she was a child. The leaves were turning gold and red, and the air had that crisp autumn feel. Mum, Stephanie said suddenly, "I want to thank you." "For what, honey?" "For saving me. For not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to. For showing me what real strength looks like." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "You saved yourself," I said. "I just reminded you that you could." She smiled, and in that smile I saw the little girl who used to hold my hand and call me her hero. But I also saw a grown woman who had survived something terrible and come out the other side. "We're both pretty strong," she said. "We get it from each other." "I guess we do." I agreed, linking my arm through hers as we continued walking. We talked about the future that day. Stephanie was thinking about going back to school for a master's degree. She was also tentatively dating someone, a kind man who worked as a teacher and treated her with respect. She was taking it slow, being careful, but she was open to love again. I was happy for her. She deserved happiness after everything she had been through. As for me, I was content. My life was simple, but it was mine, and it was good. I had my work, my friend, my daughter, and most importantly, I had my self-respect. I had learned that loving someone does not mean accepting disrespect, that being a good mother does not mean sacrificing your own dignity, that you can forgive someone without forgetting what they did, and that boundaries are not walls, but necessary structures that protect your well-being. I thought sometimes about that day in the restaurant, about Stephanie standing up and saying I was not welcome. The memory still hurt, but it had lost its power to destroy me. I had survived it. We had survived it. And in a strange way, as painful as it was, it had been necessary. It had forced both of us to confront truths we had been avoiding. It had pushed us to the breaking point, and in breaking, we had found a way to rebuild something stronger. Preston tried to contact Stephanie a few times in the months after the divorce, alternating between apologies and threats. She blocked his number. Constance sent a letter, once a nasty piece of work, that blamed Stephanie for ruining Preston's reputation. Stephanie tore it up without finishing it. We don't give them space in our lives anymore, she told me. They had their chance to be decent people, and they chose cruelty. That's on them, not us. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, sitting in that restaurant, hearing my daughter reject me, that Maureen would not recognize the woman I had become. I was harder now, but in a good way. I had boundaries. I demanded respect. I knew my worth. And I had taught my daughter to know hers, too. On the anniversary of that awful lunch, Stephanie came over for dinner. I made her favorite meal, the same pot roast and mashed potatoes I had made throughout her childhood. As we sat at my kitchen table eating, she raised her glass of water. "I want to make a toast," she said, "to second chances, to honesty, to respect, and to the strongest woman I know, my mum." I clinked my glass against hers. "To both of us," I said, "to everything we've overcome and everything we've learned." After dinner, we sat on my couch looking through old photo albums. There were pictures of Stephanie as a baby, as a toddler through all her school years. There were photos of us at her high school graduation, at her college move, in day at her wedding. We looked at that wedding photo for a long time. "You looked so beautiful that day," I said. "But you look more beautiful now." "Really?" she asked. "Really," I said. "Because now you look free." She leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she had on the train ride home from New York all those months ago. "I love you, Mum," she said. "I love you too, baby," I replied. We sat there in comfortable silence. Two women who had been through hell and back, who had hurt each other and healed each other, who had learned what it meant to truly love and respect one another. As the evening wound down and Stephanie prepared to leave, she hugged me tight at the door. "Thank you," she whispered into my shoulder, "for everything, for never giving up, for showing me what real love looks like." I hugged her back just as tightly. "That's what mothers do," I said. "We love you through the worst and the best. We just have to make sure we love ourselves too." After she left, I cleaned up the dinner dishes and thought about how far we had come. The journey had been painful. There had been moments when I thought we would never recover. But we had. We had faced the worst parts of ourselves and each other, and we had chosen to do better. That was something to be proud of. I thought too about all the other mothers and daughters out there navigating complicated relationships, dealing with hurt and misunderstanding. I hoped that if they heard our story, they would know that it is possible to come back from even the deepest wounds. It takes honesty. It takes humility. It takes a willingness to set boundaries and demand respect. But it is possible. That night before I went to bed, I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. I saw a woman who had been tested and had not broken, a woman who had learned to stand up for herself, a woman who had saved her daughter, but had also saved herself. I smiled at my reflection. "You did good, Maureen," I said. "You did real good. Standing here now telling you this story, I can honestly say I am grateful for everything that happened. Not because it was easy or painless, but because it taught us both lessons we desperately needed to learn." Stephanie needed to understand that true worth comes from character, not status or money. She needed to escape a toxic situation and reclaim her identity. And I needed to learn that loving someone does not mean accepting mistreatment, that I deserved respect, that my life, my work, my sacrifices were valuable and worthy of honor. The relationship Stephanie and I have now is deeper and more authentic than it ever was before. We do not hide from difficult conversations. We address problems when they arise. We respect each other's boundaries. We celebrate each other's victories and support each other through challenges. It is not a perfect relationship because no relationship is, but it is honest and loving, and that makes all the difference. I still work as a nurse, though I am getting close to full retirement. I still live in my small house in Pittsburgh. I still shop at thrift stores and clip coupons, and I am proud of all of it. I am proud of the life I built with my own hands, of the daughter I raised, of the woman I have become. No one can take that pride from me ever again. Stephanie is thriving now. She got her master's degree and is doing meaningful work she loves. She married that kind teacher, and they have a good life together, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. She talks to me almost every day. She includes me in her life, completely introducing me to new friends, inviting me to events, never once acting ashamed of where she came from. She has become an advocate for women in abusive relationships, using her story to help others find the courage to leave. When people ask me about that day at the restaurant, about how I survived hearing my daughter say I was not welcome, I tell them the truth. It nearly destroyed me. It was one of the worst moments of my life, but it also became a turning point. It forced both of us to confront ugly truths and make hard choices. And in the end, it made us both better, stronger people. I do not know what the future holds. None of us do. But I do know this. I am no longer living in fear of rejection. I am no longer willing to make myself small to fit into spaces that do not value me. I am no longer hiding who I am or apologizing for my life. I am Maureen Thompson. I am a nurse. I am a mother. I am a woman who has worked hard, loved deeply, and survived when many would have given up. And that is more than enough. That day at the restaurant when Stephanie said I was not welcome, I thought I had lost her forever. But sometimes we need to be pushed to the edge to find our way back to what truly matters. We are rebuilding now together, and this time we are doing it right, on our own terms, with dignity, with love, and most importantly, with respect. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been rejected by someone you love? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real stories about overcoming life's hardest challenges. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are worthy of respect and love, no matter what anyone else says. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it brought you some comfort, some hope, or at least the knowledge that you are not alone in your struggles. Remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are enough. Take care of yourselves, and may you find the courage to stand up for who you are, just as I finally did.